Hello again. Today I want to talk about some features of my oscillators in the subtractive synthesizer Straightliner. Subtractive synthesis usually starts with a spectrally rich waveform, such as the Sawtooth wave, which looks like this, and on an oscilloscope it looks like this. And the spectrum has all integer multiples of the fundamental, and they fall off at the rate of 6 dB per octave. And these features make the Sawtooth waveform a good example shape to demonstrate the features I want to show you today. These features are hidden behind this More button here. When you click on it, a context menu opens, and then you get quite a lot of options that you can tweak. Level does the obvious thing, makes it louder or quieter. The attached key slider can make it, when you pull it to the left, it makes it quieter, louder at the lower range and quieter at the higher range. And with positive values, it's the other way around. Very useful for sound design. Pan is the obvious thing, pans it from left to right. Mid-side we will see later when we explore the stereo features. At the moment there is no stereo width yet, so yeah, it does not really anything useful at the moment. The tuning setting just sets up an overall tuning in semitones. We want to see it. And you can also detune the oscillator in hertz as an absolute detuning. And now here is our first stereo feature. You can detune the left and right side differently with this slider, which gives you a nice stereo effect already with one oscillator. Which also gives a beating effect, and this beating effect gets faster when you go to higher pitches. But if you don't want to get it to go faster at higher pitches, you can also do a stereo detune in absolute hertz, which keeps the beating frequency constant over the whole key range. Oh, and by the way, now that we have some stereo width, the mid-side slider also makes some more sense. It basically adjusts the stereo width after all stereo effects have been applied. So these are not in order of the actual signal processing, but rather in the order of how they belong together. Then next in the time section we have the start phase, which just shifts the oscillator waveform in time. It doesn't make any difference sonically when you hear one oscillator alone, but when you combine it later with other oscillators or other sounds, then this may be an important parameter. With the comp settings here, comp harmonic and comp amount, you can add a phase shifted or time shifted version of the original waveform to itself and thereby create comp filtering effects. So if I put the amount to full and the harmonic to, let's use an exact number, 5, then in the spectrum the 5th harmonic is missing and all odd multiples of it. So the 5th and the 15th and so on is missing. And with 100%, with a minus 100%, all even multiples of 5 are missing. So 10, 20, etc. And with the amount, you can adjust how much of the phase shifted version is added. So you can make the effect stronger or weaker. The full wave warp setting here warps the time axis of the waveform, and the half wave warp basically does the same thing for both halves of the time axis separately. And you can combine these two also. And then you have reverse, which just reverses the waveform in the time domain. And you have invert, which inverts it, takes it to its negative, which in the case of a sawtooth waveform is the same thing. But with other waveforms, the effect will be a different one. And then in the magnitude spectrum settings, we have contrast. Contrast emphasizes the differences in the amplitudes in the harmonics. So if one harmonic is more quiet than another, then with more contrast, this difference will get even more pronounced. And with negative values, the difference will be lessened. The harmonic amplitudes will become more equal. So it's kind of like a whitening effect. And with the slope, you can just... You can see it here, the 6 dB per octave slope. It's taken out if we take here plus 6 dB. And if we have minus 6, then this becomes a minus 12 dB slope. Next, we have these two sliders here, highest harmonic and lowest harmonic. These are basically a brick wall filter. So I think these can be quite useful when you make one oscillator responsible for some part of the spectrum and another oscillator responsible for another part of the spectrum. And finally we have this even-odd adjustment. So let's take the brick wall out again. This adjusts the balance between even and odd harmonics. And finally, in this bottom section here for the phase spectrum, we have various manipulations for the phases of the harmonics. As you can see, in the magnitude spectrum, nothing changes. But the waveform itself looks quite different. Scale just scales all phases with a factor. Shift shifts all phases by a constant amount, plus or minus. Even odd shift shifts the even phases in one direction, the odd phases in another direction. Stereo shift shifts the left channel phases in one direction and the right channel phases into the other direction. This can also be used to create a nice stereo effect. Let's use it in isolation. Yeah, and even odd stereo shift kind of combines the stereo and even odd aspects. I personally like these settings in combination with the Detune settings. They really help to shape the sound. Okay, that's it for today. In future videos we will look into how these features can be applied to help us with our sound design tasks. Hope to see you then.